Hello everyone and welcome to the Ecommerce Live How to Thrive in 2020-25 series. These are some implementation webinars and my name's Lucia, I'm from Dello Insights, and over winter I asked 21 different e-commerce experts what they'd really learnt from their data last year that they're put into practice this year. From that I produced a report which came out in April. It's on my website, which is delloinsights.com, and then I invited the different experts along to talk about how to actually put their tip into a business. Today I'm excited to be joined by Chloe Thomas and Anna Stanley, and they're both talking about marketing and ad effectiveness and ways to use that, and specifically we've got a lot of information around lost data, attribution and then cookies. Would you like to introduce yourselves and give us your tip?
Okay, hello everyone. Really cool to be here. Lucy, I love what you've been doing with this whole project. And you really got me thinking when you asked me for my tip. So first off, I'm Chloe Thomas, host of the Ecommerce Masterplan podcast. That's what I'm probably best known for. And I've been in the e-commerce space for 20 years and on the content creation and helping brands do better stuff for about 10 years. My tip, when I bashed my head against the wall a few times to try and work out what the best answer I could possibly give you was around how it feels like in the last 12-18 months we've finally got the technology that enables marketers to take advantage of the new opportunities that have fallen out of the whole GDPR etc. nightmare around zero-party data, cookies etc. in terms of A, how we can accurately legally deal with it, 2, how we can capture the data that helps our marketing, and 3, how we can field the right things or send the right things back into the algorithms to make it all work in the background, theoretically beautifully, to make everything better. So that was a kind of my tip.
Thank you.
So I'm Anne Stanley. I'm founder and CTO of Anicca Digital. So we're an e-commerce marketing agency that does lots of other things like training and AI and analytics services. And I've been in the industry for a very long time. Anicca celebrated its 18th birthday, so a bit like Chloe, I've been around for a while and seen lots of changes. And I would say that the biggest changes with regards to this topic have definitely been the introduction of GA4, which for most of us has been a very painful experience. I think most people that are into data would go into the old Universal Analytics every day. And most of the features that we just came to just expect, a lot of them have only appeared in the last 6 months or so. Very simple stuff that you would just sort of expect to be there. So that's been very painful, but I think that was multiplied up by about 100 times last year when Google introduced cookie consent mode 2. And suddenly everybody thought, oh, I actually do have to take notice of this cookie regulations, which have been there for many, many years, and do something about it. And then really, I'm not sure if I'm allowed to swear on this, everything hit the fan. And nearly every single client, every new prospect, it was a real mess. And so the biggest problem with anything to do with cookie consent is and if it's implemented badly, and we can discuss what that means later, but if it's implemented badly, not only do you lose all your analytics data, you also lose all your Google Ads data. And of course, Performance Max, which is automated bidding, relies on those conversions, and generally you go into a big black downward spiral where suddenly you've not got any data and you've not got any sales. So pretty serious stuff. And consequently, as an agency that have to make sure the tracking is working before we do any projects, we found that the amount of time required to fix all this stuff has been pretty scary to most clients. They just don't realise how bad it is until you look under the hood and say, you do realise that none of your tracking is working. So yes, it has been a very difficult year for getting anything to do with measurement working properly because of this change about a year ago.
Thank you, that's great. And that leads us on nicely. So you obviously talked about these changes. Are there any other changes that have happened which have really adversely affected it, or have we now covered them all?
Chloe, do you want to go first?
From my perspective, that's probably everything. I'm not as down in the weeds dealing with this day in, day out as Anne is, so maybe Anne's got something to add, but I think we've covered the big factors. And it's almost, for me, it feels like we're in the time span where we are implementing and optimizing rather than reacting. But Anne, have we missed anything?
Well, I think the thing that it really shocks me just how few people who are running meta ads, for example, have got the conversion API set up properly. and server-side tracking. I still think there's a big black hole around that. So consequently, if you're spending any money on Facebook, which obviously a lot of people do, and you actually want to run catalogue ads or one of the Advantage product ads, whatever, and you're not bringing in the conversion data, then how the hell is the algorithm going to be able to have any data to work on? I mean, we were doing this 4 years ago, so you would have thought people would have caught up, but I'm talking at events and people still don't know what I mean by conversion API and server-side tracking. So that's a really big hole that I think people are still not working with. And of course it has other advantages. So for example, Google Ads, you can bring in your enhanced conversion tracking and it speeds the site up. So there's lots of other reasons why people should be doing that. And then the other one that I would say we've seem to have managed to miss the bullet on is the fact that Google at last have decided they're not going to bother to retire cookies in Chrome, which is something that I spent about 3 months of my life about a year and a half ago, before they delayed it again, and then they delayed it again, and then now they've finally given up the ghost. And that is a relief, because if you think about the amount of performance campaigns that rely on remarketing and all the other reasons that we need cookies, I'm very pleased that cookies will not be retired. And to be honest, I don't want to get a load of rubbish in when I don't want to use my browser and get loads of generic ads anyway. So personally, I think it's better. So I think those are the two main things. And the only other thing I think is the stuff that you're talking about, Claire, which is around attribution and incremental conversions, which obviously as a practitioner you're probably all over it and we're playing with it. So I would say that that's an area where there's still a lot of happening. So anything to do with attribution and incrementation, particularly with things like ROAS bidding, I think is massive.
So has it taken the fact that do people kind of see it as a back-end process, to kind of fix all these problems, and it just doesn't reach the marketing team, and that the marketing team just aren't aware they're there? Or is it seen as, a cost to the business? Is that why, these things are existing?
These things aren't expensive to implement. So, there's software like Stake, there are others. If you've got a Shopify site, I think Elevar is pretty much a simple plugin. They're really, really pretty cheap to implement. You're talking less than £100 for most of the solutions, depending on how many platforms you're going in. Obviously, if you've got Facebook, Meta, Pinterest, TikTok, and others, then you're likely to be using it more extensively. So there's no excuse really. But the increase in data and the increase in conversion rates and the quality of the data makes a massive difference. So I don't understand why people aren't implementing it more generally.
Chloe, have you got any opinions on that?
I mean, I think there's a couple of reasons why it's ending up not being done, and I totally agree with them. From personally, I'm like, I'd be so all over this if I was still running ads campaigns. I'd be down in the weeds getting it all done. So naturally, I'm like, why would people not be doing this? But of course, it's not a natural skill set, and we're in an era at the moment where, with all the shifts that are happening, especially with the ad platforms and with the amount of noise and the maturation, I suppose, of the e-commerce industry, is we're now in a place where the marketer is being pulled in lots of different directions. If we want to get the ad platforms to work well for us, we've both got to get great creative, which means getting really good at customer research, creative creation, copywriting, images, product photography, etc., which kind of comes in. We've then got the drive for profit somewhere in the middle, where we've got to become really good at understanding inventory management to some extent, or at least liaising with those members of the team. And then down at the bottom, we've suddenly got a scenario which, if I remember back when I did consulting, 10 years ago now, the number of times I get into a company and we'd be looking at the marketing report, we're going, is that INC or XVAT?
Yeah.
And they would, they might go, oh, it should be this. Well, let's just go into analytics and double check. And is that the same in your email software? Yes. You could tell they were starting to doubt themselves. And then, is the cost column XVAT? Nobody knew. So it's been something that I think actually the universal analytics world enabled us to be wrongly very lazy when it came to attribution and just expect it to be there. And now we've had both the GA4 arrival, nightmare that it's been, and the new cookie scenario legally leading to new opportunities for us with new types of tech, new ways of tracking data and all this kind of stuff, and the algorithm, the ad companies' desire for better conversion data, there is huge opportunity, but it's a whole other skill set. So getting back to my initial point, I think marketers' jobs are evolving faster than it's fair to expect the small marketing team in an e-commerce business to keep up with it. And I think if we look just at Facebook ads, there's been far more noise and information about how to adapt your creative strategy and how to optimize your campaigns than there has been noise and advice around. Did you know what server-side tracking is? I mean, sadly, it doesn't surprise me at all, Anne, that you're going out there doing sessions and people are putting their hands up and going, what's server-side tracking? And you're like, oh my God, you're clearly someone who's spending 5-6 figures at peak on Facebook ads and you don't know? You know, and even if you're not the one running the campaign, if you're giving it out to an agency, you should be asking them, because I bet you a lot of agencies haven't yet got round to recommending clients.
No, I think agencies are as bad, to be honest. I do think that whole measurement thing is very unsexy, and interestingly, I think people that do Google ads tend to be better at this stuff because Facebook tends to attract quite a lot of creative people. There's still this so all of our PPC team can do paid social, but none of our original paid social team have learned the other way around. So it's definitely a one direction. Interestingly, most of the jobs that marketeers do, any conversation I have, it's sort of obsessed with AI at the moment. And nearly everything that a marketeer can do probably can be AI'd out in the next 2 years. But interestingly, I think the area that won't be is anything to do with measurement, attribution, and putting these things together, because you need quite a lot of technical skills to do this stuff. And I think people are quite scared of it, and marketeers don't feel comfortable in that world. So it's quite a high value, high skilled job. The other thing I wanted to say was, can you remember when Magento 1 went to Magento 2 and everybody had such a bad experience, they all abandoned Magento and went to Shopify or WooCommerce? I think something similar has happened with GA4. A lot of companies, particularly if you've got a European head office, were saying, no, we're not dealing with GA anymore, it's banned. But also, it's such a traumatic process. A lot of people have abandoned it, and they're looking at alternatives like Triple Whale, obviously Adobe and stuff like that. So I think actually there's been quite a lot of migration to alternative platforms where attribution and other sort of measurement protocols are more ingrained into it. So I think, their very poor launch and lack of basic functionality in the first 2 years really, has meant that quite a lot of people have said, no, it's too much hassle for me. I don't mind getting a Looker Studio report or using something like Dello Insights dashboard, but I can't be bothered to learn all this stuff because it's so bloody complicated. So I think I think a lot of e-commerce websites now are just looking for easier alternatives to do this stuff because it's too much pain.
See, I think all these changes, building on what you're saying there about Google Analytics 4, I think it's led to teams going, oh, we need an analytics strategy. Oh, it's not just one click and analytics happens. It's like, we need a strategy, because if you want to set up GA4 right, you've actually got to make some decisions about what you want. And I think going through that process, people went, actually, is this giving us what we want? Are there alternatives out there? And as you say, you've got the Triple Whales, the Suite Analytics, a whole plethora now, and marvellous selection of analytics tech you can now choose to use, which may mean you don't need GA4 apart from for your Google ads, but let's not get down that rabbit hole. But then I think also we're at the point where we're now going, we need a data strategy, a tracking strategy that goes across from the legals of GDPR and whichever zone of the world you happen to be operating in, down through decisions on how we create stuff for our own marketing and our own records, like email marketing, etc., through to what we feed out to other partners, which goes through all kinds of data within the business, not just the marketing data, but product data, delivery data, etc., and how you bring it all together. And I think we should be moving to a world where you've got an analytics strategy and a data strategy, but we should also be moving into a world where you've probably got, to use an annoying phrase, it's far too often used in politics, but you need a data and analytics czar somewhere in the business who floats across all the departments helping to bring this all together. did a webinar about tech stack optimization, which strayed into this a couple of months ago, where we were saying you need someone to own that strategy that is cross-department, and almost like someone owning the Google, the person who owns the Google homepage and goes, no, not on plan, go away, you're not doing that yet. We need to focus on this bit. You need that person in the business, or that team in the business, if you're big enough, who are properly in the weeds of setting up all this stuff up, but also checking it continues to deliver. Because one thing changes in one area and all of a sudden the rest of it stops working properly. And we think about all these automation tools and all this stuff that's helping us, but so often you massively screw up if you're not regularly checking it's actually still working.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, because one of the other things that we've ended up having to do is, first of all, we realised that in the majority of the cases we actually lose money at the beginning of the process of setting up the tracking, because we go into the business, we do a really extensive audit as well. It's not like we don't go in with our eyes we don't go in with our eyes closed, but then suddenly they say, well, actually, the other thing is that we get all these offline orders, and it was never mentioned, and that then goes into analytics, or they use this third-party tool to do something. So you've got all those sort of unexpected. So the cost of doing all the tracking becomes more expensive than, for example, setting up the ads accounts or setting up the sort of tech SEO side of things. And secondly, now we realise that there's a constant demand for regular changes or checks or updates, because things break all the time. So we've ended up having to put in, like you've got like a client account management and one of your line of your media, we've actually got an analytics measurement. It's only probably a quarter or half a third, half a day a month, depending on the size of the account, but it's not an insignificant amount, and people aren't used to it. But I think when you go in and say, well, you do realise it just isn't working, or this is so badly broken we can't really help you until it's fixed. And we have to be quite stubborn. So basically we say, well, if we don't do it, we really don't want the work, because if you can't measure it, you can't manage it. So you have to be pretty strict with people if you're going to be doing it. So I definitely think that, and that's really why I said, if you don't get the basics right, you're screwed, really, in a polite way of saying it.
And when there's so many solutions out there and so many different ways of measuring things and none of them quite lines up, it's a huge project in itself to go through them all, know exactly what your problem is, diagnose it, and then actually put the right piece of software in place, isn't it, as well?
Yeah.
It's not insignificant, that work, and I think that's beyond the skill set of a lot of people who are involved, that aren't the techie people. You say first party, second party, and their eyes just glaze, don't they? You just see it going across.
But I mean, I totally agree, because I'm a great believer that there's not one piece of tech that's perfect for everyone, especially in the e-commerce space, which is why it comes back to having that strategy and working out what you actually want to know, why you need to know it, and creating a strategy before you go out there and buy your tech, and definitely before you start setting it all up. But I think also there is now, because we've had this shift over the last 4 or 5 years, there is now tech available. There are now experts in this space available, often weirdly coming out of the SEO world. I seem to find a lot of SEO freelancers who are amazingly good at this stuff. So there are now people out there who can help you put the strategy together, who can help you implement. Your ad agency should obviously be able to help you with this stuff, but they're only interested in one part of it. They're not going to see the whole business, and when it goes into inventory, partners, marketplaces, wholesale, whatever other elements you're doing. So I think whilst not every marketer needs to fully understand the technical abilities of how to do cookies, they do need to understand why they need it and be able to make the right decisions. But there's people out there who can help them do it. It's like back in the day, when we were talking email marketing, we all got very obsessed with deliverability and very techie deliverability stuff, and pretty much no one in email marketing really cares really spends a lot of time worrying about deliverability anymore, because the tools are doing it for us, and we're moving in that space. But I think it's definite. She says, trying to find a good way of wrapping up this little rant without completely destroying her argument, but I think it's definitely something you don't want to be burying your head in the sand about at the moment. But there is a lot of help out there to help you get it right, but start with the strategy.
So what would you search for if you wanted to find one of these people? What search terms would you put in?
Oh God, there's a good one. I might start with what your current challenge is. Mm-hmm. So something like first party cookie tools or Facebook server-side tracking help?
But to be honest, Chloe, if they don't understand it, they probably won't know that's what their solution is. I think they probably, the people that we've been talking about that aren't into this, probably will, how do I improve the amount of conversions I'm recording in? It will be something much more colloquial, because they'll be describing the problem rather than understanding that first-party cookies and server-side and conversion API is the solution, unless they've happened to read something about it. So maybe the sorts of things that they will be searching on is sort of analytics agency or something very generic like that, because they don't really necessarily know. They might say, oh, my conversion campaigns, my meta conversion campaigns are not working. But most people learnt that 4 years ago and have stopped doing it and not bothered to revisit it. That's why there's so much money that can be made if you can get this right.
So things like your PMAX, why my PMAX, campaign not spending any budget, and that might be a way of you diagnosing you've got a problem because PMAX stops working, and then that'll be the place to start.
There's a couple of other things I wanted to just mention around the same topic. Is first of all, we had one example of a standard. I won't say which e-commerce platform it was, but they use a standard off-the-shelf cookie consent, and they lost 80% of their data overnight because the design was so terrible of the way that it was tracked and the implementation, and therefore they lost all their traffic. So if you do a cookie consent and you do it badly, you can be talking about devastating hits in traffic measurement, and then you go into that downward cycle with Performance Max. But irrespective of all this, you've still got the problem that even if you are using GA4, the attribution is so bad that the direct bucket gets accredited, everything gets stuck in there anyway. So I've seen huge amounts of, spend loads of money on Facebook ads and it doesn't appear anywhere, it's all indirect. And so you have got problems like that, which obviously Google is nowhere near matching what's happening over in Facebook or Meta. And then also depends on what attribution window you use, because if you're using a view through, it will look like Facebook's absolutely amazing, but actually the revenue isn't there. So I think there's a whole load of issues like that we've not talked about. But I'm sure that Lucia's got a whole load of questions that we probably should be. We've just gone into a bit of a ramble, haven't we?
Yeah, if we wanted the detailed, specific, cookie tools or recommendations, if you two got some ones you'd fire off, people should really look at, or approaches.
Well, I guess the starting point is to use a cookie management platform, but you need one that's been approved by Google for Consent Mode 2. We tend to default to Cookiebot because it tends to be reasonably easy to control. Some of them are quite problematic. The settings aren't very good, and they can be quite difficult to install. But Cookiebot, I think, is dead easy. What do you use, Chloe?
I'm not going to name it because A, I didn't set it up, and B, I haven't looked at the rest of the marketplace. So I'm going to.
Is it good or bad?
I have no idea. I assume it's good. I haven't checked it. So hence, I am not going to give a recommendation because. I trust the person who put it in, but it's not my recommendation to give, so I'm going to pass on that question.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying that some of the others don't. Some of the others aren't okay. That's not my point. My point is that I have heard a couple of others that we've had experience with, which have been pretty awful, and I definitely won't name them. But I think we just ended up with a sort of an agency account, and Cookiebot seems to be reasonably easy to implement. So. But there are others available, and I'm not getting any commission from Cookiebot, which is a shame.
Just no. Thank you for that one then. So, at what point would be kind of spending more budget on your attribution tools to actually doing the marketing? What's the right ratio? Would you say? Because obviously I know Triple Whale's got quite a cost to it. Google Analytics.
I don't know how much Triple Whale costs actually. What is it?
Ooh, I'd say
I don't know off the top of my head. But I mean, my answer to that would be when you start having an attribution problem. For a lot of small businesses, I think we have to split attribution from data tracking to power the algorithm, because they're two separate things. Attribution is about you as a business deciding where the best place to spend your money is. And then the other part is about feeding the right information back into Google, to Facebook, etc., to enable them to understand the impact of their traffic to drive the right people to you. So I think let's split those two. This part the putting the right information into Facebook ads and Google ads, everybody should be doing. Whether it's the off-the-shelf server-side tracking into Facebook ads, getting your Google Analytics set up correctly to go Facebook tracking into Facebook, weirdly enough, your Google Analytics going into Google ads and keeping it that basic, or whether you're buying what are relatively low-cost tools to help you do it, that bit everybody should be doing. If you're spending any money on Google ads or Facebook ads,
I totally
you are
agree.
you're a muppet if you're not doing that, because you can spend all that you want on the top end with the creative, but you're hamstringing yourself at the bottom if the platform doesn't understand what the data's doing for you. When it comes to the attribution side of it, understanding how to make better marketing decisions in your business, it's once you have a problem. You know,
or you've got a large enough spend, because the problem is that a lot of the tools are quite expensive. I don't know how much Triple Whale is, but the incremental gains that you have, I think you probably are in the £50,000 to £100,000 ad spend a month before it's worth investing in it. It's a bit like brand uplift studies. If you're not spending enough, the cost of doing it and everything else isn't worth doing it. I don't know. I mean, is that the sort of level you would have gone in, or would you have gone in lower than that?
I mean, I wouldn't put a number on it. I'd put it when you've got a problem that needs solving, and you think that could solve it for you. Then I would go and explore it, run a test for a month, see if it helps you make better decisions and do better ad spend. If it doesn't, make a different decision. But I would certainly imagine it's more than £1,000 a month ad spend before you start worrying about it, because it's like all these things. If you haven't got the data coming in, which is how much you spend, the click traffic, the impression traffic, you have you have nothing to optimize unless you're spending a certain amount. So if you haven't got enough to even optimize in Google ads, in Facebook ads, in TikTok ads, etc., then you don't need a better attribution tool, because you're not putting through the throughput of data, so you're not going to come across the pain until you're putting through enough data, would be my take.
I think some of the media mix models and things, they reckon sort of 100k before you get enough data to be able to make the decisions that you need to make. I mean, what we do to sort of emulate some of this stuff is that we would use something like Looker Studio, or other platforms are available to bring in both the 1 day click, the 7 day clicks, and then show that versus, I think the standard is 7 day click plus 1 day view, which is, that completely over exaggerates everything, to try and understand what's going on. So we'll play around with that and then see, using UTM codes or whatever, to try and see if we can find the traffic over in GA4. One of the biggest problems is convincing clients that they still think that Google is the point of truth, and you have to explain to them that Google is a business and Google's there to make them money, not you money, and their primary way of money is to make Google ads look amazing and everything else look a bit crap, really. And so consequently, that is problematic, and consequently it will always make your Facebook and your paid social ads look a bit rubbish compared with Google ads. But I definitely think you're talking sort of 50k plus a month before we would invest in it, and they've got to have, they've got to be investing in more than one channel to see which one's the right one to invest in. I do like the concept of blended ROAS though, looking at the total earnings of a website, because you do see that when people do spend more money on PPC, for example, they tend to get more. I look at a lot of similar web data, and you tend to see if one competitor spikes with its PPC spend, they get a spike in organic and direct traffic as well. Some of which I'm sure is attribution issues, but some of it is just the fact that once somebody remembers a brand, they're going to come back and search for it. Mm-hmm. So, I do like the fact that you look at your total spend across your different channels and see what your total revenue is of the whole site, and that, I think that's really interesting stuff as well.
That's brilliant, thank you. I'm going to ask you about AI before we disappear, because I know it's very close to your heart, Anne. Is AI helping in this area, or is it just we have to get this data right?
Not at the moment, but it will do pretty quickly. There's some brilliant tools. If anybody's not used the new Claude 4 and the new Claude artifacts, that's amazing. You can put in a real mix. It's got a lot of graphical, analytical coding functionality, which wasn't really there before. Also, if you're not paying for Claude, I definitely recommend it, because Claude Projects is really good. But also they've got internet access now, so Claude has suddenly gone up significantly in my estimations. I use it for nearly everything. I flick between that and ChatGPT and Gemini, but Claude is a really good. There's a lot of stuff going on with automation and marketing. The analytics side is probably the weakest area. I know that we're doing some stuff together to try and use things like inbuilt AI and things like Zoho Analytics, some of those. There's a tool called Julius.ai if you want to look at data. That's been trained on quite a lot of analytical data. But we're looking more broadly at the business and how AI can help. But I'm convinced that most jobs that we're doing currently within a marketing agency, you can automate the majority of it, and you'll get humans working with AI assistants within the next 12 to 18 months. And if you're not already looking at it, you need to be. So that's my favourite topic at the moment.
Chloe, last words on AI?
I think I can't compete with Anne's answer there. That was very, very, very thorough. And I was scribbling. I'll be watching this back when it hits YouTube and scribbling because I didn't scribble well enough then. My take would be find a problem, right? It's like we used to say. You don't go, I need to do Facebook ads. You go, we've got an acquisition problem. Maybe Facebook ads could solve it. And it's exactly the same thing with AI. It's not, we should do more AI. It's, I wonder if this hugely time-consuming, annoying thing I'm doing, trying to reconcile data between 3 different places to try and find the trends, I wonder if AI could help me do that. Or, those kind of things. So think problem first, solution second, not solution first. Let's find a problem to wield it at. That would be my AI advice to try and help you all stay sane and use it in the right places. Because
I couldn't agree more. We've created a 10-step framework, and the first C1 is called the C10 framework. The first one is challenges. So completely agreeing with Chloe, you don't want to go down the shiny object syndrome and just look for like new tools. A good example would be there's lots of tools out there to bid on profit, POAS rather than ROAS, so profit-based bidding. But if all your product margins are all 50%, you don't need to do it. So let's go and find out the things that are taking you the time. Like you were going on about all the creative early on, Chloe. You started the fact that people do that. Well, nearly all of that can be automated now. So if you're spending all your time building creative and ads out and videos, well, all that can be done. So I definitely agree with Chloe on this. Find the problems and then find the solutions which AI can help you automate with. But nearly everything within marketing, if it's software linking, it's computer based, there will be a solution out there already.
That's a fabulous point to finish on. Thank you so much, Chloe and Anne.
Pleasure.
Thank you. Bye bye.